Despite its apparent simplicity, this room has a vast, almost spooky amount of history. Studio 2 at Abbey Road Studios in London contains only a few old tape recorders and pianos. This is the song that was played on Obladi Oblada, the producer Giles Martin declares, hitting a few high notes. His father, Sir George Martin, created the Beatles' most ambitious album in this room 50 years ago. It was an album that pushed the boundaries of recording technology and, without a doubt, contributed to the evolution of music listening. Early in 1967, 24 sessions were utilized to record and mix Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band at this location. The final product was a surprising departure from the band's previous sound and aesthetic. It became one of the best-selling and most acclaimed albums of all time. On May 26th, the album will be re-released with the deluxe treatment that music fans have come to expect from special anniversary editions. A 6-disc box set containing dozens of outtakes and alternate versions of songs, a 5.1 surround sound mix, a short documentary film, and a full-color book. The 13 songs that comprise the core of the album were all remixed from the original tapes discovered in the Abbey Road vaults. Using a combination of old machines and modern techniques, the new mixes give one of the most iconic rock and roll albums a new sound. Martin, who led the 4-month project to remix the album, states, "We have not added to it. We will not acquire any additional instruments. We will not add more voices. Instead of adding to it, we are subtracting from it." Instead of simply remastering the album's sound, the 2017 mixes of Sgt. Pepper was created by going back to the original 4-track tapes and attempting to recreate the album in a way that respects the band's artistic vision while allowing Martin and his fellow engineers to be creative. This mix was created from the original studio tapes, as opposed to later copies that were overdubbed. As a result, the sounds on the new record are more distinct than ever before. If you're enjoying this video so far, please hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so for more Beatles content. Martin says, "Because we're mixing from tapes they've never mixed from before, it sounds much livelier. You feel as though fewer barriers separate you from them." I believe that to be the case. Martin launches Pro Tools on his computer and plays a clip of the updated version of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds to demonstrate its functionality. Paul McCartney plays the opening notes on an organ, and Martin adds a stereo effect that causes the notes to move across the speakers slowly. John Lennon's voice begins with a slightly phased, double-tracked effect. It already sounds different than the version with which I grew up. In the conventional stereo mix, Lennon's voice is audible and the first few notes remain in the left speaker, as opposed to shifting from one ear to the other. When the bass, guitars, and drums enter for the chorus in the 2017 rendition, everything sounds clearer and a bit more bassy than usual. This sense of confidence and clarity permeates the entire new album. The voices are more distinct, and the instruments are sometimes louder and sometimes more distinct. The mix sounds fuller and more spacious, and John, Paul, George, and Ringo's instruments and vocals have more breathing room among the album's many layers of sound. People who have listened to a great deal of music will likely notice previously unheard details in some songs. A portion of this is because the sound is now more distinct. For example, you can hear the movement of your fingers across the guitar strings. Martin and engineers like Sam Ockel made some of these decisions on purpose. Martin collaborates with Ockel on Beatles projects because he knows every closet's worth of skeletons regarding the recordings. Martin and his team attempted to retain as much of the original mono mix's sound and feel as possible, as opposed to the stereo version that most young people now prefer. Lennon's doubled voice in Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is not a novel effect, for instance. It was what Lennon desired with the original mono version, which fans rushed to purchase in 1967, was mixed down. Martin claims that the stereo mix was an afterthought back then, and the band would not even show up to record it. It just so happened that stereo became the most common method of music listening. Martin states, "The band, my father, and the engineer spent countless hours on the mono mix. When transitioning from mono to stereo, different rules apply. One block of sound to the face is more intense than 2 individual sounds." Instead of remixing the album in mono, a remastered mono version was released in 2009. Martin and the engineers attempted to retain as many of the mono version's qualities as possible while mixing the album in stereo. Martin determined what the band desired by utilizing institutional knowledge. It helps that he is the son of George Martin, notes written on tape boxes 50 years ago, and attentive listening. What do you believe they would want if they were present? Martin says, "You must decide on matters of this nature." When re-listening to the original mix, some of it becomes clear. If John Lennon was holding a fader and pulling it down because he wanted something, we should likely respect that to some degree, according to Martin. Martin always discusses these types of endeavors with the surviving band members and their families. Olivia Harrison, the wife of guitarist George Harrison, listened to the new version of one of her husband's songs, Within You, Without You, and gave her opinion. Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr were also capable of the same feat. Martin had difficulty getting the final sound of A Day in the Life just right before McCartney's assistance. Martin says, "You are aware that you are creating the new Sgt. Pepper album for Paul McCartney. It's a little unsettling because it's his music. Generally speaking, there is trust." The Beatles conceived of and recorded Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band during a pivotal period in their career. The Beatles were exhausted from constantly trouting the globe, so they decided to stop performing live, take a break, and return to the recording studio with a fresh perspective. This was aided somewhat by their recent discovery of LSD. McCartney's concept for Sgt. Pepper gave the world's most famous band a chance to start over and pretend to be someone else. Since the band had no intention of performing their new songs live, this removed a significant creative constraint. With the assistance of George Martin, they created an album that took advantage of the recording studio and its technology, even at its most advanced. The Beatles had already experimented with different sounds on Revolver the previous year, so Sgt. Pepper did not hold back. They brought in an orchestra, rare organs such as the mellotron, and as many other instruments as they could afford. Martin states, "The feedback we received indicated that you can suddenly hear everything, and the album is so well produced that it is preferable to hear everything. You think, God, I wish I could hide things when I make certain records." The result, which began with a double-sided single containing Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane in early 1967, surprised many people with its more complex, eclectic sound that includes psychedelic, orchestral, pop, ballad, big band, and circus music. The album's experimental nature and wide range of sounds make it an intriguing, if not risky, record to revisit and experiment with after 50 years. Martin uses modern mixing techniques and software like Pro Tools in the studio, but he also frequently employs the 1960s and 1970s technology and concepts. Tape machines and effects used in the initial sessions were reintroduced when necessary, but there was no strong preference for analog technology. Martin states, "In the spirit of the Beatles and my father's action 50 years ago, I believe it is crucial not to favor technology. The interesting thing about this album is that it is being produced, not about technology. It contains many pleasant songs. Even though the reworked album pays homage to its history, the final product would not have been possible without the modern tools used to create music. If only the original Abbey Road machines were used, it would be very difficult to recreate the multi-tape layered effect. Even simple tasks, such as adjusting the equalization (EQ) on the drums, are significantly simpler than they were in the past. Ringo Starr's drums, particularly the low end of the kick drum, are louder and sometimes more centered in the mix on this album. Martin performed the remixed songs for a group of people he refers to as Beatles fanatics to test his gut one final time. These are the most vocal critics if Martin misses the mark in any way, as they are the most knowledgeable music experts. Martin desires to find a balance between these individuals and a new generation of listeners. We live in this modern world of streaming, where a child will place this next to Kendrick Lamar and it should bump onto the speakers, Martin says, highlighting how much music listening has changed since the days when children waited in line to purchase new LPs. He must find a way to appeal to today's equivalent of those children, while also keeping his older fans satisfied enough to give him their money once more. Martin claims that George Harrison was 24 years old when Sgt. Pepper was recorded. If we can get the youthfulness and vigor they had when they recorded the song to emanate from the speakers, it will always be present, even if the item is 50 years old. What are your thoughts on today's video? Please let us know in the comment section below. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss any of our incredible videos. Keep an eye out for the next video. Bye for now.